Hey folks, it's Ray with Taste Radio. Right now I'm honored to be sitting down with Junea Rocha, who is the co-founder of Brazi Bites. Junea, it's so great to see you.
Great to see you, Ray. Excited to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I missed the opportunity to speak with you at Expo West 2022. You were there. I recall seeing you there with a pretty sizable team of folks. How many people are on your team at this point?
Our company has about 20 people managing just, the branding side of things, not the manufacturing, more in manufacturing. But about 20 people. We had a great time at Expo. It was good to be back on the floor there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had plenty of food for people to nosh on and enjoy, which I'm very appreciative of as well. I mentioned to you before we got on the mics that Brazi Bites is a top brand in my household. It's eaten often and stocked quite a bit in our freezer. So thank you for that. The cheese bread in particular is our number one go-to SKU from Brazi Bites. But everything else is amazing too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Very exciting news for Brazi Bites. Earlier this week, you guys kicked off your Latino Entrepreneur Accelerator program, kicked off on September 15th. Please tell our listeners a bit about the program and its mission.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. I'm very excited about the accelerator we just launched. So it's called the Latino Entrepreneur Accelerator Program, and it's something that's really close to my heart that I'm passionate about. The program aims to lift Latino entrepreneurs during their most critical times in their journey. And it's doing those early stages. And I'm really passionate about giving back and sharing all the knowledge that I've gained over the last decade or so growing Brazi Bites. And so this was an opportunity to organize this giving back in the form of accelerator. And so the way that it's going to kind of play out is the entrepreneur is going to win a grant in the amount of $10,000. In addition to that, and I think more important than that, is going to be 12 weeks of mentorship directly with me and my amazing team here at Brazi of sales, ops, finance, and so whatever support that entrepreneur needs. And so excited about the program. Applications are just open now in September. It's going to be open through, it's also part of our Celebrating Latin Heritage Month that's happening right now. And that's an important time for us to uplift our brand and other brands along with us. And the application is open now until the end of October. So
Amazing stuff.
yeah.
$10,000 and 12 weeks of mentorship. I have a feeling you're going to get a lot of applications. And it's just one person who will receive the grant, or is it a number of folks?
So the way it's set up is that one company is going to receive the grant, but we're expecting a lot of applications. So we wanted to see how we could help more brands. And so there's the second tier for the finalists, where we're going to use our platform to bring awareness to their brand. So it's just a different way to support them as well. So it's a little bit, so about 4 companies total are going to be supported by Brazi in one way, shape, or form.
Very cool. And you should be congratulated for this program. It sounds pretty amazing, and it sounds like it'll benefit a bunch of folks in our industry. I have a feeling there wasn't something like the Accelerator program that you're putting on when you launched Brazi Bites in 2010. I'm sure that would have been helpful. But, talk about your process for educating yourself about the food business.
Yeah, so I agree. I feel like there's so much to learn when you enter our industry, and there's so, many passionate entrepreneurs with ideas. And it's like, how do I get started? A lot of the questions I get, it's like I start telling about the brand, but people are like, no, but go back to that step one, go back to that I feel like it's hard for people to kind of, that are even outside of the industry coming in. It's like, but how about that very first step? When we started, there's a few things that helped us a great deal that I can go back to. So I live in Portland, Oregon, and this is where founded brands, where the Brazi Bites headquarters is located today. And here in Portland, there is a big food community and a thriving ecosystem of food in general. So farmers market's really vibrant. There's a lot of agriculture here. And there are some like key retailers that also play an important part in kind of growing the natural food ecosystem, such as like New Seasons, the Market of Choice, and Whole Foods, the Northwest region. So there is a bit of an ecosystem. I think that was very helpful. There's a couple of things that we did that were tangible back then. We needed to learn from the ground up, how do I launch my company? I had this idea, but what do I do next? We took a class in a community college here that's called Getting Your Recipe to Market. Literally, like the name just tells you pretty much, what it means, but it goes about 3 months, and it just teaches you the ABCs of taking a recipe and putting it out in the market, and all sort of the things that you must know early on, how to package, UPC codes and stuff. And what's cool about this program is at the end of it, you get to pitch your product. At that time was New Seasons Market, big retailer in our industry. And, it's kind of, you go from like knowing nothing to pitch to New Seasons in 12 months. So that's kind of cool. So that program helped us a lot. We pitched to New Seasons. There was another thing about it is that the winner would get placement. We pitched to New Seasons at the time. We did not win. And that time I was like, oh my God, it's the end of this brand. We were barely getting started, but it wasn't. It was just the beginning. And we obviously later got into New Seasons, and today they're wonderful partners. But that sort of like that helped. And then began educating through just the food ecosystem, more in the local market, because we weren't ready to do trade shows yet early on. And so getting peers, I'm a huge believer on peer mentorship as an entrepreneur, especially in the food industry, but just as a founder in general. Because when you're going through the struggles of the first few years, nobody like in your circle of family and friends, if they're not entrepreneurs, are going to get what you're going through. So having peers that you can bounce up ideas and just acknowledge the struggles really helped us a great deal. And then as the brand grew and we kind of branched out of our region and starting to go to Expo West, we built a network that became more national, right? And it was the friends that we were making on the floor that we would call up. And then so it became this thing. It's like you're constantly learning, you're constantly asking, and you're trying to avoid big mistakes. And you're trying to just like make the best choice that you can with the information you have on hand.
I think that's great advice. First of all, I love the idea of taking a class or some sort of course on how to bring your recipe to market. It feels like at least you get the basics of that part of the business. And then secondly, obviously building a peer network and talking to other entrepreneurs who have been where you were and been able to find their way into this industry is really important, and to continue building that network along the way. I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who talk about how difficult it is to bring a brand new concept to market, to bring a brand new idea to market. But you've talked about how that was an important part of your vision for the brand. You wanted to be the first to market brand of Brazilian cheese bites. But little did you know, and probably surprising to our audience, there was already one available on the market when you launched. How did that affect your go-to-market strategy, your retail strategy?
Early on, it affected much more in the local market. So the story kind of goes about this, right? We had the idea of bringing Brazilian cheese bread to market in a way that we believed that sort of would have the most impact, but it was kind of like in the way that we believe the product should be consumed and the way that our household was eating products, i.e. clean ingredients, best tasting, real ingredients, and just delightful, right? And then it would be branded in a way that Americans could understand, and it would be marketed in a way that would eventually lead to a national distributed product. So that vision was established early on. When you're bringing an international product to a new market, there's many examples in the US. I mean, global products are popular, but there is a lot of nuance in the way that you brand and that you market the product and the way that the recipe is created. So anyway, while Brazilian cheese bread as a concept was not new, we had our own vision that was very different. And we felt like our vision had a shot of success. When we launched, like right in the beginning, it turns out that we had a competitor in our local market that also thought that Brazilian cheese bread was a great idea. And so that was like challenging, and it felt like a massive obstacle early on. And it really, we had to dig deep, and like we believe that we are different. We believe that we are adding value, and then we're gonna kind of like figure our way out. The reality is, because Brazilian cheese bread is so popular in South America and it's a staple, it really is everywhere in the US, in this sort of like international markets and in farmers markets around the country. And we kind of love that. We embrace that because we want that product to be introduced more, and we want it to be known, the category. But of course, we want Brazi Bites to be that brand that it is, the known brand that has all the distribution, that is in every store. And that's what the type of distribution we have today. And we've been able to build a brand that way. But yeah, it was quite like a shock, launching the brand and thinking like you have this idea, and then it's like the first door you start knocking. I remember the day going to like an event in the local market, and then I see this other entrepreneur with a little cooler. And I was like, that looks like the cheese bread. I can't believe this. And it was, you know, one of the strategies was outwork, believe, we hustled really hard for many years building Brazi Bites demos, on the ground. The story that in our industry is, all over, it's you're working 24/7, you're doing all the jobs. Our story has a lot of parts like that. And part of that, it's like outworking the competition. With that piece early on was outworking. And, I wish I had a better advice and a magical way to tell other brands that there's a easy way to just do that, but it was about outworking. It was about outsmarting. It was about demoing more, telling the story better, pivoting more, trusting that recipe was better, and all that good stuff. And eventually that competitor went out of business and we took off.
Well, it's never good to hear about a brand going out of business, but it's great to hear that you were able to outwork and out hustle and outthink your competition. On that note, I hear a lot about hard work, and I think there's different definitions. There's varying definitions of what that means, what that term means. What does hard work mean to you?
For me, building Brazi, like it took, like hard work meant truly hours of work. It took like every ounce of passion and energy and believing, and also being smart, right? Because you can work all the hours and working on something that's not productive. But for me, like building the brand, I like to talk about like our brand was building in phases. So the first 5 years were on the ground. It was knocking on doors, was full of rejection. It was just sort of like trying to explain the product and building and learning so much and having to change so quickly. And what that took was just like a lot of hours, a lot of determination. It was truly like nonstop, for the first 5 years, the two of us founders, and trying to figure it out and making some mistakes, but for the most part, being smart, asking smart questions, pivoting quickly when things were not working. And, that to me, and I think building brands from the ground up, from nothing, requires that level of time and energy.
Part of that energy went toward producing your own products. I think this is a huge hurdle for early stage entrepreneurs is production. How do I make my product? Who's going to make it for me? And early on, you were self-manufacturing. What are the benefits? What are some of the challenges of doing so?
So I love that question because it's something we've been talking about again in this stage of the business, and really digging into the pros and cons of the different dynamics of manufacturing because of all the supply chain issues that everyone's having, and the tough last 12 months or so. For us, I think when you're looking at, do I go self-manufacturing, do I go third party? There's a number of things that play a part. And I think one of the very important ones is what kind of product you're making and what kind of manufacturing capabilities are out there in the country to meet your need. Brazi Bites is a brand that operates in the specialty frozen space. Okay, so I think anytime there's a word specialty, or there's sort of a niche or something that you're inventing, something that's not automated, you're gonna have a hard time beginning that company and going straight to a co-packing model. There's pros and cons to both, right? But for us, there was so many benefits in the early days to have our own manufacturing. The first one and most basic one, the company was too small. We did not have adequate volume to go to a co-packer and say, this is the demand for the year, do projections, negotiate on pricing. We weren't even in that neighborhood. We were pretty far from that. So we needed to learn, and we also needed to learn the manufacturing. We needed to create the manufacturing for the product, everything from the ground up. So we also were bootstrapping the business. So there was just a number of implications. There was only one path, it was to make your own. But because we weren't funded, we were bootstrapping, we started very small and we stared steps. So we went from a shared commercial kitchen. So you're just paying by the hour. And so your, cash out is very limited, just attached to your output. And then we start growing distribution a little bit. And that we're like, okay, we need to hire a couple employees. We moved from that to a shared warehouse where 4 brands that were allergen friendly. So they're all gluten-free. We could get the seal of the gluten-free, and we could hire our own employees and operate in a little corner. That was a great next step for the brand. And then we started growing, like we need full-time production. We need more storage space. We went about building our own facility. So that was a bigger step for us. We built a facility. We had done a round of investment back then. We had, a combination of loans and convertible notes and such for the brands, and we're able to build our facility. Then we began to scale. So I'll pause here to just talk about the benefits of that. Just you control your brand very closely. You become very intimate with the manufacturing process. You become very intimate and close with all your suppliers, what it takes to do well. You're able to innovate very fast. You're able to do everything that you need for your sales and marketing efforts very fast. And that was really important at that moment in time. And so that was very beneficial. Cost control, just everything. Now, on the downside of that, manufacturing takes a lot of attention, and there is, costs associated with that can get out of hand. Because we build manufacturing size for that appropriate time, we didn't have an issue with cost, but we had an issue with attention. You got to deal with hiring and employing and equipment and all the stuff that comes along with that. For that moment, it was very positive. We learned so much and became very intimate with the process. Now, fast forward, the brand explodes overnight, goes on Shark Tank. Everything changes. That model doesn't work anymore for that moment in time. It was boom. We kept seeing the writing on the wall because the brand was getting a lot of traction at that year. And we're like, ooh, this model is not gonna, there was a capacity there. And then there was the attention. We were founders running sales and everything. It's like, we have to do something. And so the co-packing model looked very appealing. And we were at that time where we could then go to a co-packer and say, this is how much it costs to make this product with this equipment. These are all the suppliers. This is the projection. So we were in a position to do that. And so that was the right move at that time. And then the company blows up demand overnight. We then now have a partner to support us with that effort, can switch gears to become more of a sales and marketing, finance, brand growth organization.
Thank you for sharing the story, behind the decision to start manufacturing on your own and then why you moved to co-packing. It'll be interesting to see if you decide to go back to that self-production model, or at least adopt it as part of your manufacturing strategy. You expressed, why that might be a good path for the company. At the same time, I'm thinking about the Shark Tank story, and as you mentioned, you guys were on Shark Tank, and I've talked to other entrepreneurs who've been on the show, and whether or not they received investment, one of the things that's tripped them up sometimes is having enough inventory on hand to meet the demand that comes from that show. When when you were on the show, did you realize how many people were going to be buying your products? Did you have enough inventory to supply everyone?
We understood the impact of the show back then. So it's important to note that we went into 2015 pre-streaming. It's like society has changed so much because now with streaming, there's so many more options and nobody's watching live television. It seems like I'm talking about a different era, but it was not. Okay. It was like not that long ago, we were all watching live TV. So Shark Tank in 2015, not only everybody's watching live, but it's highly popular. Almost 10 million viewers every Sunday were, sitting on their couch and watching this show. So we understood the impact of this show, but we did not understand. I guess I would say we thought we understood the impact of the show because we did a lot of research and talked to entrepreneurs, but no, we were totally unprepared because I don't think that you could prepare at that time with the infrastructure we had on hand. We were very small by nature. We were under $1 million in sales. We had some traction. We were in about 600 stores nationwide, 600 doors. So we had Whole Foods, we had some Kroger and Sprouts. So the brand was starting to get out there, but highly in the natural channel. But there were, I think we had 5 of us in the office running the brand at that time. So we weren't prepared from like an office standpoint and production standpoint to handle that level of overnight success. But look, it was awesome, right? So I mentioned this sort of viewership at that time. What was cool about our brand at that time is that we had been working really hard for 5 years and hustling, and we knew we had something special in our hands. But the biggest challenge of entrepreneurs in our industry is that there's a lot of amazing products out there. And not everyone gets discovering time to create a viable business. So we knew the writing was on the wall for us because at some point you're going to run out of cash or you're growing, at a pace where it's not as appealing and there's no investment money at that time. So there's all these dynamics of that moment that you need the money. And we knew we had something special. There were all the signs, and we knew the cheese bread deserved its moment. And the show gave the exposure that the brand needed at the perfect time. And the demand just came flooding. I never saw it again, and I have rarely seen in our industry a product that's not sold in e-com. It's sold in grocery stores because you're a frozen brand. Now we have e-com and there's grocery delivery. Again, this is all new stuff, right? We did not have any of that. We had a store locator. And what that exposure did for us was the demand was so massive and it was so incredible. And people were so moved by learning about the company and wanting to try our products that they literally dropped everything the next day and drove to the nearest store. And we sold out nationwide, and we sold out for the next 4 months. There was a frenzy on the brand. We couldn't keep up with demand, but the brand went from under 1 million to over 8 million. And it would have gone even more. I mean, it was absurd.
Did you say it went from 1 to 8 million?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Under 1 to over 8. And only because that's all we could make.
What was the time frame for that? Was that within a year?
It was less than a year. It was kind of the year that followed, right? So I'm giving you kind of annual revenue.
Yeah.
For the leading up. And I mean, and this is position where we couldn't keep up with demand. So imagine what it was like if we could, but it was head down and try to make as much product as we could to try to make sure that consumer that was so interested in the brand was able to eat the product within that time frame. Because we knew once they ate it, then they would, love the brand and be turned into a customer. And so it was like, let's go, It was amazing. It was awesome.
And that was just with one product line for so long, just with the Brazilian cheese bread. And in recent years, you've expanded the line to include a number of different products. You have mini empanadas, you have pizza bites, you have breakfast sandwiches, and all of them are fantastic. Folks who are listening, if you haven't had a chance to try any of those products that I just mentioned, please go ahead and do so because they're fantastic. Let's talk about the timing for brand expansion, for looking at Brazi Bites as a platform brand. How do you take into account both retailer needs and consumer trends, when you're thinking about expanding the brand?
So our brand, the Brazi Bites brand, is sort of like a bit of a case study for focus in our industry. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable, but that's what worked for us for all kinds of reasons, including the fact that we had a very lean team and we bootstrapped for so long. But this is kind of how we grew, right? You talked about the cheese bread for just being the product and was the brand. Think about this, Ray. It was 8 years of one single product line, not one single flavor, not one single item SKU, but one single product line. Because we felt like we were the best at it, and then we could execute, and there were much more doors to go get. And if we were laser focused on doing this one cheese bread really well, then we could create the brand from it. And so throughout those 8 years, there were a few iterations of different flavors that came in and out of the picture, but this is what we do. As the brand grew and became much bigger, sort of this post-Shark Tank and demand stabilized for the cheese bread, we then had time to kind of start digging in and saying, like, who is buying this product? Why is this brand resonating? What are true values? Because when you're growing a brand and you're like, I like this product, I believe in my recipe and my ingredients, you actually don't think about all this like sort of like things that like those big things. Like we didn't even have a mission and vision. The mission was make cheese bread. Cheese bread.
That's a pretty good mission.
It was a good mission. It was awesome. But it was like it was about the product and all the things I was telling you about, the packaging and the messaging and the recipe. There was a mission and there was a vision there, but it wasn't structured. It was just like, we're gonna get cheese bread, we're gonna teach people how to eat, and we're gonna like pivot along the way and all that good stuff. So then we start building the brand stabilized, it became more of a business, and we're like, okay, who are we? Like, why are people buying this? Why are people drawn to the brand? What has made us successful up until now? Then we started hearing from consumers too, like, Brazi, what else you got going for me? I think our fans wanted more from the brands, and so we started hearing more, like, what else can you guys make? Can you make just different things? So there's this line of thought is like, can you just bring all these products from Brazil, just make all these things? Some of them don't align with our brand, identity and what we want to do. And can you just become a gluten-free brand? And just because you're gluten-free and just create all this gluten-free line. So having to find like who we are, what makes us special. Then we kind of did a lot of inner work on that. And then from that, started creating new product lines. And we learned that Brazi Bites at that point could become a platform for better for you Latin-inspired foods that were absolutely delicious. And the main driver for the love of the brand turned out to be the taste, just the deliciousness, and all the values, all the things that we do every day that we hold ourselves accountable are super important. But to the consumer, the number one, it's like you're delivering this thing that just like blows me away. It's like the tagline that emerged at that point was, you have to have them, because we start realizing that when people learn about the brand, the consumers would introduce the brand to a friend at a consumer show or in social media, and they were telling people, oh my God, you don't know what Brazi is? You have to have them. And we start seeing that. And then they were telling each other. And then we start seeing that in trade shows. A buyer from a store would bring their co-worker and be like, oh my God, we are not carrying Brazi Bites yet. You have to have them. So that became sort of the tagline. Then it was like about taste, but with our values intact. Then we defined what that was and began to launch products that were thoughtful with that in mind. Another thing that we discovered in that process of just like, we love playing with products and what our consumers need and what the market needs and stuff, all of that is being played out. But the cheddar parm, our top selling cheese bread, Ray, which you mentioned is the one favorite in your household, is a powerhouse for the brand. It's the traditional. And that item, we discovered that it's a vessel for many forms, and those forms can be just absolutely amazing. And so that item is sort of becoming this pocket for a number of innovations, including our most exciting one of the year, which is the pizza bites. And it's the one that has massive traction right now. And it turns out that that particular dough with, fresh, better for you pizza flavors inside created this explosion of taste that is something that we're really excited about, and it's been really well received.
When you were thinking about extending the brand, did you have a roadmap in place, or was a lot of the talk about brand expansion after the investment from San Francisco Equity Partners, which bought a majority stake in the company, I believe in 2018?
Before that deal that we made, that we structured the company to build a team and position for growth, we were beginning the studies around it. It was kind of like leading up to that. We had recognized the potential of the brand. We had grown quite significantly, and we wanted, we recognized that we needed to innovate, and we started building a roadmap for the innovation. But it was sort of like that grassroots way to sort of like what were consumers. It was the early days of understanding the brand. After we did the deal, one of our main objectives was to build a team to position for growth. During this process of building the team and getting an investment, we got much more organized about that. There was processes put in place with timelines. When you're a founder and you're growing at that scale, you're just sometimes showing up and you're getting through the day. You're putting down the fires. You're wearing so many hats. It's hard to put your head up and get organized and build a roadmap for growth. So that's what we kind of did at that time, is kind of pause and bring more resources, so we weren't doing everything.
Yeah, your role changed as well. You changed roles from CEO to CMO. Can you talk about why that move was right for you and also right for the company?
Ultimately, I was given the choice during the transaction with our partners, SFEP, and there was a lot of conversations around it. What are the founder roles moving forward? We knew we wanted to stay on. The deal was made and the investment was made to grow, so we were excited to stay on. But there were a lot of conversations about, what does a team look like? What do you want to do? So I feel like I was put in a position that was a great position to be put in, which was like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you love about what you do? And what are some of the things that perhaps we should hire other people? So there was a moment and a time for those discussions, and it allowed me to kind of stop and think what I wanted to do. And part of that, I also understood that, post private equity, there's a lot more reporting involved, and a bigger company was going to be built with a lot more team members, more staff to manage. And as I looked into that whole picture and the founder story, and the fact that I ran sales for the company, sales and marketing for a decade, and so my knowledge of that piece and where I could add value the most. So it was a combination of those things, and I felt like somebody was better positioned to run, the overall enterprise and the reporting piece and building the team and all of that kind of stuff. And my skills would be better served, and I would enjoy my day-to-day more if I was in a role that was more focused on the branding side, on the consumer side, on, the selling side. And I love that side. I think part of the Brazi Bites success is just listening to the consumer, and I always tell my marketing team, because as a CMO, I oversee the marketing team, and I tell my team all the time, the consumers are showing us the way. They're telling us what they think. They're telling us what to do next. They are even telling us what kind of content they want. Just listen, and so like I love that part. I love paying attention. I love our consumers. I think as a founder, trying to build one bag moved out of the shelf every day. We move millions of bags right now this year. But back then, it was like every bag that moved, I was grateful, and I still am. And I think I carried that sort of like hustle and how hard it was to drive demand for those early years, that I think I can add a lot of value bringing that perspective to the table. And then sort of like, how does that mesh with how I talk to my retailers and how I explain that what my innovation is. And so I think that's where I bring value, and that's what I love. And there's better people that can be doing the job, the important job of the CEO by a private equity run company.
That's that's a big decision to make, and it sounds like it's worked out. I mean, in the 4 years since San Francisco Equity Partners made the investment, the brand has continued to grow and expand, and it sounds like the partnership is a good one. You talked earlier about how you built the company early on through loans and other forms of debt. This was, I think, the biggest amount of investment in the company until that point. Is that right?
It was. It
Yeah.
was.
So how did you evaluate that opportunity? Because I'm sure there were other people knocking on your door, or at least there were other suitors for the brand. How did you evaluate the opportunity that San Francisco Equity Partners brought to you guys?
Up until that point, we had learned a lot about raising money and how to fund a business. So we had done all kinds of things. We were, by the way, horrible at raising money in the early days. And I speak of that with pride because we got rejected by every investor angel in the early days. But you know what that happened to us? We developed we were so laser focused on growing the brand that we became not bad, we were a little bit delayed at raising money. You know how a lot of founders and companies just launch and they're really good at raising money, but they have no business? We were the opposite of that. We had a good business and we were building a good brand. So we got a lot of lessons on the raising money side, because for years, nobody would give us a penny. It was painful. And, but then what that did is just forced us to keep learning. Like, why am I like the worst at raising money? And then we were seeing like other founders with products that were not getting any traction, raising, $1 million or whatever the need was. But then that at some point we're like, okay, we got to get better at this. And so we started learning all of the things and how to become, fundraisers. This skill set as a founder you do need. You need to tell your story. You need to understand the mechanism of raising. So we kind of like understood, all the mechanisms and how to fund the business. And so when that deal came about, we were at a phase of the company where we had become profitable. So that was very nice for that size. We had built a business that had consistent demand, but we were growing very fast and we had no team. We had 4 people and we had, a ton of demand, and we were just putting fires every single day. And so we did not position ourselves for growth. And then we look at all the consumer needs and the love for the brand, and, our belief that this brand is so much more and can be something really amazing and have much more reach through new products and so on. And so the way to execute on that vision was through a private equity deal. Because at that time, Cameron and I did not have the skill set to build a team and to just stop everything and like understand what it would take to restructure the business. Now living through it, we understand what was done to get us here into position for growth, but we did not know at that time. And we are investors. We had some angels at the time. The group didn't know what needed to be done. So we felt like, okay, getting a deal with a private equity that can come in and sort of like help us grow this thing, and someone who believes in the brand. How do we get that deal done? We ran a process. We did have a lot of prospects at that time, but we wanted to run a process that was formal with a banker, that was organized, that throughout this process, we did a bunch of brand work and sort of like some visions for the brand, a lot of it on the financials and product side. So that was really helpful. And then we wanted a partner that was really aligned and understood the potential of the brand. And so while you have incomings and, you know, a lot of the brands, as you're getting traction, you start getting incoming calls and emails, there's different quality across the board and there's different knowledge. And so we wanted a certain type of structure and partnership, and SFPP was a partner that throughout this process, there was a lot of alignment, and there was a lot of, they believe in the authenticity, in the mission, in the you know, the idea of a Latin foods platform. And they had a track record of building authentic brands. So in the end, they got selected as the partners.
I like the way you put that. In the end, they got selected. You were not selected by them. They got selected by you. Junea, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today. I really appreciate it, and I think our audience is going to learn quite a bit from everything that you talked about today.
Thank you, Ray. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you.